Hey guys, welcome to Great Learning. Now, cloud computing is a domain which fits really well alongside all these other domains, right? When you think about it, everyone from individuals all the way to these Fortune 500 companies, they want to try to maximize how much of potential they can actually use with respect to a huge platform such as cloud computing. Now, if everyone is interested in cloud computing, you must understand that there has to be a huge amount of customization in terms of delivery of services, and that is the important reason. That is in fact the most important reason of why people are even considering cloud computing first of all, right? Because they get to have customized solution rather than saying, hey, here's one solution, this should work for you. Not really like that. Now, to thank the way the cloud development works in a way, you have to take a look at the cloud models, right? When you talk about cloud models and the model services such as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, right? This way of modeling actually helps the community a lot, and in fact a lot of people get the convenience of cloud computing because they get to explore these options and eventually jump on one and use it, right? So this becomes a very critical component of your learning, and that's the reason we here at Great Learning have come up with this course on software as a service, wherein you get to understand where we will deep dive into the concept and make sure that you know everything there is to know about SaaS in cloud computing, right? Well guys, I know you guys are super excited to get started with this course. So what are we waiting for? My name is Anirudh Rao. Let's get started.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. This is done to make sure you do not miss out on any of the new updates or video releases from Great Learning. And of course, guys, if you enjoy this video, show us some love and do like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, right? So make sure you share this video with your friends, colleague, and everyone who can make use of it. And at the end of it, make sure to comment on the video if you have any queries or any suggestions, and I'll be more than happy to respond to all of your comments.
Alright guys, so to come to the agenda of this course, we're going to start out by taking an introduction to cloud computing. It becomes very important for us to know what is the problem that we are trying to solve with the world of cloud computing. What can we do in today's world of cloud computing? And once you start answering all of these questions, you yourself will be very curious to say, hey, so why do we even require cloud computing, right? What are we trying to solve and what does it do really well? We're going to answer all of that, and once we are clear with that, we're going to take a look at the types of cloud deployment. Now, types of cloud deployment is very important, right? On the lines of public clouds, private clouds, hybrid clouds, community clouds, and a lot more. So you need to have an understanding to see in, what type of deployment works well for whom, right? So we're going to be answering all of those questions, and after that we're going to be diving right into understanding the variety of services we have in today's world. This includes infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and of course the course that you guys are here for, which is software as a service, right? So we're going to be taking a look at all of that. Now, as soon as you understand these varieties, and I'll give you like wonderful examples to ensure that you remember these services, how they work for a really long time. After this, we're going to also take a look at the introduction to SaaS, right? This is where we'll focus our learning on SaaS, and we'll make sure to understand not only just how it works, but at the end of the day, how best can you use it? What are some of its advantages? And not just advantages, with respect to SaaS, it's extremely powerful, but it brings its own set of risks and challenges that you also have to know about, right? So we're going to be discussing all of that. And at the end of the day, since we're talking about cloud computing, pricing is usually the biggest factor, right? Not just in models, but with respect to providers, platforms, and a lot more. So we're also going to be taking a quick look at understanding what kind of pricing policies are super popular today for SaaS, right? Well, with that, we can begin with the first item on the agenda, which is introduction to cloud computing. We can actually get started with what is cloud computing. Now, whenever you think about cloud computing, the most important thing that would come into your mind, the first thing that would pop up in your head is probably an operation as simple as backing up your photos to your Google Drive or something like that, right? Back in the day when cloud computing started out, this was actually the case. When users started using it, when it was started to put to commercial purposes, at the end of the day, it gave very little room, very little freedom for what the end user could do. But today, if you take a look at cloud computing, computing, you can back up your photos. You can have entire companies run, Fortune 500 companies and companies worth trillions of dollars. You can have the infrastructure, the entire setup on cloud computing platforms and run your companies directly from there, right? So what is cloud computing if it's this powerful? Well, cloud computing is basically a concept of wherein you will have servers, you will have a lot of physical infrastructure all around the world through which you provide services, right? Now, when I say services, you might have heard of this concept wherein you might be backing up a couple of things to your office server, right? Your office server is nothing but an entity that is sitting on premise, that is sitting right next to you in the server room in the same building, same city or something like that, right? In the case of cloud computing, what happens is that there are servers similar to that, but it is exponentially more powerful and can handle way more number of clients, and it is strategically located everywhere around the world, such that when someone in the US has a requirement, they have a server there to provide for that. Someone, let's just say in Egypt, has a requirement, they will have a server nearby there to make sure that they can have access to any sort of services, right? You can build and deploy machine learning algorithms. You can have a variety of storage. You can perform real-time computational analysis, and you can do a lot more with today's world of cloud computing, right? Back then, it was just backing things up. It was just ensuring that you were using a server to basically have an extra point of storage, a redundancy in case something fails. But today, having an on-premise server is for that purpose, right? So having an on-premise server is meant as a backup while having your entire company work on the cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, or GCP is the trend. You would have seen this entire trend reverse, because what those guys are doing, the services, the tools, the techniques they're offering to their platforms at a very, very competitive price in today's world, what makes these companies actually go on to prefer that, right? So at the end of the day, our discussion should be, why should we even require cloud computing in today's world? The first thing you have to understand is that we generate a lot of data in today's world, right? Now, I just made that sound. I just snapped my fingers. By the time you actually heard the snap, we would have generated terabytes worth of data, hundreds and hundreds of terabytes worth of data by the second you heard that sound. Now, when the world is generating so much data, and the world has also realized that data is almost like fuel, right? You can use it and you can drive so many things with it. Back then, probably 15, 20 years back, when we generated a lot of data, it was archived and maybe it was destroyed later on. But these days, people realize that even something which might have a small impact on your business, if analyzed to a good amount of depth, has a profound impact, right? So considering that, data is transforming the way we work, and of course in today's world, the way we work with the data itself is transforming in a way where we're generating so much, right? So having the ability to move entire companies and work from the cloud, having access to their extremely fast data storage methodologies and super powerful processing machines are what will give you an edge over your competition, right? Think about it. And it's not just this. Back in the day, we were limited to the amount of services that you could access via these cloud computing platforms. But today, you can, I just want to say this, you can do almost everything, right? 99.9% of what you would do on an on-premise network, you can do it on the cloud. Sometimes it is considered to be even more safer, even more robust, and at the end of the day, the rate at which it might fail or it might cause issues is coming down with every single day, right? But the biggest advantage of why people are considering cloud computing, to be very honest with you, is the last point there. The pay-as-you-go policies, right? Now, pay-as-you-go is a concept as in you will only pay for what it is that you're using. Let's just say you have a requirement wherein you require a virtual machine for 20 minutes to operate on a certain load, right? You have a load and you want to use it for 20 minutes. Now, let's just say you don't have any hardware at your home or your office. What would you do in this case? You would go to your shop, you would purchase all the hardware, get it all set up, find a person to install everything for you, all the software, and eventually find a person to maintain all of that as well, right? But with cloud computing, it's a few clicks of your mouse, and guess what? The initial investment that you have made for an entire computer, which you'll probably need only for 20 minutes, and later it might just be used for something else. But in the case of cloud computing, you're only allocated that computer for that amount of time, and you only get to pay for that much, right? That is a fraction of the cost of what it would actually cost to buy an entire computer. Now, similarly, just enlarge this idea 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times, and you would understand how much money you would actually save doing this. It's not just money, it's a lot of headache running a lot of servers, because at the end of the day, it's not just buying these servers, it's about maintaining them. It's servers, right? It will tend to go bad. It'll have a lot of hard disks, and hard disks go corrupt every now and then. And it's not just that, you'll be paying electricity bills. You have to make sure it's compliant with your fire hazard standards, and at the end of the day, you have to also cool it enough such that it doesn't melt or doesn't burn up or something like that, right? So all of this headache will eventually cost the company more time and more money. But if you can offload all of this to say, hey, I want someone else to take care of this, I don't want to be bothered by any of these, I want to spend my vital time actually working on my application. That is important, and that is one of the reasons why cloud computing is so popular in today's world, right? Now, after that, you might be asking a question saying, hey, Anirudh, okay, that's fantastic, but how does this domain work? How does the domain of cloud computing actually work? Now, when you take a look at understanding cloud computing, you'll have to basically divide it into two divisions, all right? One is the front end, the other one is the back end. Now, when we say front end and back end, right now, wherever you're watching this video, you basically are looking at the front end side of things, right? Front end is where you have a user interface through which you can directly access a video that is stored again in a server, which can be right next to you or which can be thousands and thousands of miles away from you, right? But it is giving you a feel as though you've plugged in a USB into your computer right now when you're watching the video, right? But it's only the front end that is making sure that you have this user experience while the actual data gets stored elsewhere, and all the things that is needed for the communication between your front end and back end is also important and present, right? So front end is such an important concept for cloud computing, because at the end of the day, user experience is what matters a lot for all of us, even in the most mundane tasks that we do, right? Think about social media. Way back in the day when Facebook came out, when its first version went viral, went public, and everyone was switching from Orkut to Facebook, you would realize that it was nothing fancy. It was amazing. It was going good. But compare that interface to today's Facebook interface, right? A million things have changed. Of course, some of you can argue that a couple of things were better then, a couple of things are better now. All of that is a separate discussion. But the user experience you get even from social media applications will want you to spend more time there. It will want you to explore a lot more. Cloud computing is very critical in this aspect, because you will have a variety of developers, variety of users, clients, everyone who may or may not have used a cloud computing platform ever in their lives before, right? So considering everything, the goal of a cloud computing platform is to ensure you have a great front end, not only to use the platform, but at the end of the day, when you are creating applications and deploying them on the platforms, those also get to have very good front ends, right? So front end, regardless of where it is, web development, data science, cloud computing, no matter what domain you look at, one thing you have to understand is that it is super critical. Coming to the backend is where again all your data is stored. It is literally like the heart of cloud computing, wherein everything that's necessary for it to work is right there, right? So let's quickly explore front end and back end a little. As I just told you, front end is what actually helps the users have access to all the data that gets stored, right? Now the data is stored in the back end. The actual data is in the back end, but it gives you a feel as though you're directly connected to the back end. In many cases, you directly are, right? The front end does not just give you a user interface, but it has a direct impact on your user experience as well. So understanding that what you see is not exactly how a server would work. A server would work, it'll take a lot of programming, a lot of database knowledge and everything to get it run and set up and all of that. But at the end of the day, you wouldn't want everyone to do that, right? If you just have a backend running, separate all the complex procedures, give the user a good front end to work with, that is a win-win situation. Think about it. Right now, when that is done, the next thing that comes into the picture is the actual backend. Backend, as I just told you, is where all the data gets stored, where all the servers are there, where everything needed to run these servers, power, cooling, whatever it is, right? So the backend is literally, you might have seen videos of these data centers and all of that, right? And if you haven't, I really suggest you head to YouTube and check them out. All these giants such as Google, Amazon, even Facebook for that matter, all these guys who generate a lot of data and have to handle a lot of data, they have data centers which have so much security, and you'll understand the amount of care that goes in while you actually take your data to a provider and say, hey, I want to take I want to store my data in your platform or something like that, right? So if there's this very simple operation of you actually analyzing data to create some beautiful looking graphs or something, a beautiful division between the front end and back end is basically you actually showing the graph is on the front end, right? Maybe you're in a meeting, you just want to show the graph and say, hey, these are the data points I used to get to this graph. That is the front end. But all the data that is required, all the analysis that goes into the data, and the actual creation of the graph, where do you think all of this happens, right? So all of this happens in the back end, and it is very important for you to analyze this. Okay, that's good. So we discussed the front end, we discussed the back end, but how do you get the front end and the back end to talk? Is it as simple as just running a couple of wires or something? Not really. So basically we have a software, in fact we have multiple softwares called as middlewares. Now middleware is nothing but a platform that acts as a bridge between two or more applications or two or more devices, right? Now, whenever you are using the front end to connect to the back end, again, as I just told you, it's not a simple connect of a wire or something. This sits as a bridge to ensure that at the end of the day, you have one server wherein you can have multiple clients connect to it, in fact, at the same time, right? That's how the world works. So this software, which acts as that bridge, this software, which acts as a connector through which you can have access to these servers, services, or anything as such, is very important for you to understand. Getting your front end vitally to talk to the back end, and any request that is basically made by your front end, when your front end says, hey, the user clicked this button, now I want that task to happen, your front end will tell that to the back end. Your back end is like, okay, if that's a valid task, I'll do it for you and I'll show you the result on the front end again, right? These operations. Now a very simple click of you guys entering your email ID, password, and hitting login button, maybe on your Gmail or something, right? When you hit login, it's a front end application that you're basically trying to use, but as soon as you log in, it has to go to the servers, check if your username is correct, check if you've entered your correct password and all of that, and eventually come back to tell you if everything was correct. And if everything was correct, you log in. If everything wasn't, you don't get to log in, right? So that is something which is important for you guys to understand. After we have discussed all of this, you'll be very curious to understand what are some of the types of cloud deployments that we have in today's world. Well, to answer the question, we have four very important types of cloud deployment today. It's the public cloud, the private cloud, the hybrid cloud, and the community cloud. Now, even without, presuming that you might have never had any experience with cloud computing, as soon as you take a look at that, don't you think you can guess what it might do, what a public cloud is, what a private cloud is, what a hybrid cloud is or something? Just think of your favorite cafe or something, right? If someone says, hey, this is a public cafe, it means that anyone can walk in, anyone can have a coffee there and walk out. But if someone says, hey, this is a cafe, but it's only private, it's only meant for the employees of this particular building or tower or something like that, there you must have some sort of access or authorization to actually get into that, right? Similarly, the cloud works there as well. But when you say hybrid, people say that, hey, so maybe not outsiders cannot walk into this particular cafe, but maybe the people who stay in these apartments can walk into this cafe and have a coffee and go, right? Think about that. That's hybrid, right? People outside maybe just one apartment building are still coming, and you have multiple apartment buildings where you're saying if you're part of this and this, you can actually, it almost seems like it's private, but when we actually explain the concept of hybrid, you'll have a better understanding. And then it's the community cloud, right? Let's actually get right into the heart of these to talk about what each of these mean, because in the context itself, I'm sure you will have a better idea of what they are. right? Now, to talk to you about public cloud is a super popular form of cloud deployment. Now, the infrastructure, right? Think about the examples on the lines of AWS, basically Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and even the Google Cloud Platform. These are public clouds. As in, if you can log into their platforms, anyone across the world can actually start using the features provided by this provider, right? The infrastructure is provided for all, and it can be shared among all the customers as well. So it doesn't mean that if there are 7 billion people using cloud computing, it doesn't mean that there are 7 billion servers out there. There could be just a handful of servers which have the capability to handle this huge amounts of load and all of that, right? So there can be cases where, in the case of public cloud, where there's a team who's working on software development, or there's a team developing a couple of projects which will require collaboration not just within the organization but maybe on the outside as well, right? So having public cloud again has its own advantages and disadvantages, but in today's world, having the access to say, hey, this is not a research topic, this is not something which is classified or something like that, right? People have access to it. You and me as absolute individuals can in fact launch an entire company if we want to on the cloud computing platform, and you have the facility to do that. You have to thank public clouds such as AWS, Azure, and GCP, and of course there's a lot of other people as well, but you have to thank them for this ability, right? So the biggest advantage of public cloud, in my opinion, is the fact that you have the pay-as-you-go model. Regardless of any type of cloud, in my opinion, having the access to pay-as-you-go model is something that's going to save a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of resources for the company, right? Think about it. Why should you have to pay for something in full, knowing very well that you might be only using it for a short amount of time? Think about the PC example that I gave you, right? Let's just say you're into video editing or something, you require a very powerful machine right now to use it, and you'll know that, hey, I'll only use it for 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month or something like that, and after that it's your heavy initial investment, and you'll know that I might not be able to use this anymore, right? Because maybe your project ended or something like that. In that case, what you would do is you would jump onto the cloud computing platform, they have a ton of, all these cloud computing platforms in today's world have a ton of really lightning fast computers out there. Depending on what what level of speed you require, how many clients will access your application, what is the amount of resources you require, you can map each and every single thing and just pick up that and just pay for the amount that you would have used, right? If you've just use something for 1 hour or 2 hours or something, you would only pay for that. Now, with this comes another huge advantage. One, you're of course saving a ton of money, but the second thing you also have to look at is that you'll be creating highly scalable systems, right? Today, you have an application which 10 people are using. Tomorrow, it might grow to 100. Day after, it can be 1,000. And maybe 3 months from now, your company just went viral and there are millions of people flocking towards your brand. When that is the case, your servers, if it is probably in-house or on-premise or something like that, you would have to go out to buy new servers, upgrade all your network modules and all of that, because you wouldn't be able to handle that amount of traffic. But with respect to these platforms, you can never overwhelm these platforms, right? No matter how much traffic you bring in, the platform has more to offer, right? It's almost like an infinite funnel, and it will keep providing the resources that you would require. That is how big today's world of cloud computing is. But with respect to cloud computing, in terms of public cloud, you have to understand one thing is that if you are looking for complete control, end-to-end control of your product, your application, and your platform, it is not possible, because if you've deployed your company on AWS, if you've deployed an application on Azure or something, how Azure works, and there's a very good chance that some 1 or 2 servers might go down there as well, right? So that control you will not have, and that is an important thing which you should know about. With that, we can discuss about the private cloud, because the private cloud, these have been in use for a really long time right now, because whenever you think about certain companies running their own servers, running their own farms through which they have a ton of servers, and people of that organization only access to those servers, right? So these are private clouds, and these have been used for a really long time, as you could guess right now, and they are used, let's just say, by only one organization, right? But of course, since it's connected to the internet, if you're an employee of so-and-so organization, you can sit at the end of the world, at the other end of the world basically, and still connect to it with your email ID, password, or any other authentication protocol that they have, right? With respect to a private cloud, one thing is that you're not sharing your resources with anyone else. With respect to public cloud, that happens, right? One server can be used by 3 or 4 companies out there. With respect to private cloud, it's only your employees, your officials who are using that, and it is completely owned by the company themselves, right? So you're responsible for just buying the infrastructure, maintaining it, ensuring it runs well, and at the end of the day, everything that is required to keep those servers up and running is at the company's end. Now, with this, there come certain advantages and there are certain disadvantages. The advantage is, of course, the fact that if you're a person who says, hey, my data, the security for my data is the highest priority. This data is, it's classified. I don't want anyone else apart from the people in my organization to see it. And I don't want to be sharing servers and storing this in public domain. In that case, you can actually have a private cloud setup wherein people only with respect to your organization will have access to that, right? And you can, inside the organization also, you can say, hey, people with L5 access, L4 access, level 4 basically have access to this, and anyone below L4 will not have access and they cannot work with these servers, right? So that is critical for you to understand. Outside the organization, you can block all traffic. Inside the organization, based on authentication, again, you can still do that. But one disadvantage here is for the fact that you lose that versatility that you have with respect to public cloud, right? And the most important thing you lose is the scalability factor. As I just told you, if you have on-premise servers and private clouds running, today you have 1,000 people, tomorrow you have 3 million people, your servers will crash because they were never meant to handle 3 million people. But if you initially spent out a ton of money to say, hey, I know I might get 3 million people, so let me just buy it all right now. Again, it would have cost you a huge amount of money to buy that, and at the end of the day, after 3 million, maybe you can hit 10 million as well, right? And the remaining traffic cannot be handled. There again, your scalability has taken a huge hit. With respect to public cloud, this problem is also solved. But if that extra security, if security is your number one priority and you say, I don't care about anything else, security is what I want, private cloud is something you should look forward to, right? Superb. With this, we can take a look at the hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is considered to be the latest standard in cloud computing. I'll tell you this, because hybrid cloud is nothing but a combination of public clouds and private clouds, right? Now, there are certain companies who will say, hey, we have certain information which we don't want to put on the public cloud. We will have our own private cloud sitting at our office where we'll have all of these extremely critical information bits which we won't share to the public cloud, which we will have across the organization. And we also want to make use of certain perks that you're providing as a public cloud platform, and maybe have a front end there, maybe try to do something wherein your server talks to those servers and all of that. So if a company comes with a requirement such as this, you can use a hybrid cloud wherein both your on-premise private cloud and the public cloud can work hand in hand, right? But with respect to private cloud, as you already know it, it cannot grow up to the demand. It cannot meet certain demands as much as a public platform would do. But what the advantage of hybrid cloud is that you can use all of these capabilities that public cloud is known for. Scalability is the most important thing, right? You can literally use that amount of scalability and say, hey, if there's any heavy lifting to do, and if I know that my private cloud cannot handle any of these, great, I'm going to just move all of these heavy lifting tasks to the public cloud. And again, with a couple of mouse buttons, you can have any sort of power, any sort of resources in your hand to solve whatever it is your application requires and be done with it. Correct? Does that make sense to you guys? Because hybrid cloud is considered as the future, and around you, almost any company that you can name will be using some sort of hybrid cloud. No one usually goes completely private, or no one usually goes completely public. And knowing that, hey, there are certain advantages of both the domains that I would want to use, why do you think people will pass up on an opportunity such as that, right? That's super important for you to know. Now that we took a look at hybrid cloud, what it is and what it does, I think it's high time we quickly take a look at some of its advantages and disadvantages, right? Now, scalability and security are something which differs the public cloud from a private cloud, and we bring those two together, right? You can have the scalability of a public cloud, you can have the security of a private cloud, and you can bring those two together. Now, when you're using the best of both worlds, you have to understand that you will actually end up saving way more money than having individual solutions. solutions at hand. Now, this differs from application to application, but in the general sense, as I just told you, you can use the best of both worlds and you can find ways through which you will be saving money in both the ways. For example, in the case where scalability matters, you don't have to spend a ton of money for your private cloud. Just whatever heavy lifting, heavy resources are required, just move that to your public cloud, you're good to go. And any sort of data which you would never want to put it in a public domain, store that in your servers. Good deal, right? But one slight risk that happens in the case of hybrid clouds is, especially when you're moving data between your private cloud and your public cloud, there is a very slight risk that there can be data breaches, your data can be hacked, your data can be manipulated in many cases. It happens extremely rarely, but it has happened around the world. And if there is an advantage, always, if there is a huge advantage as much as this, it comes with a tiny cost. But of course, all the cloud computing platforms in today's world are doing everything that they can to make sure even this gap that exists between your private cloud and public cloud can be built. You can have walls built around your data. It's called firewalls, and you can eventually make sure that unless and until you're authorized to have access to that data, there is no way that you can have access to it, right? So that's really important for you to understand about hybrid cloud. Now that we're done with hybrid cloud, the next thing in discussion has to be community cloud. With respect to community cloud, you have to understand it's very important for collaborative applications, right? Now, let's just say that there are certain users who opt in for a community cloud and they say, hey, there are many companies working in, let's just say, the same industry, right? Maybe manufacturing industry, maybe e-commerce industry or something, where they would say, hey, most of us will want similar levels of performance. I know for a fact that most of us might want the exact security protocols, right? Or something very similar too. In that case, you can have a community cloud where one cloud will cater to one industry where there are multiple competitors who are also working and sharing the servers and working there, right? Now, you might ask a question saying, hey, if community cloud is considered, isn't it considered completely public? In many cases, yes, but you can also have it to be managed privately as well. You can have your own server there coordinating with the community cloud to make sure that at the end of the day, again, your data security, your breaches, all of that is taken care of, right? Now, in today's world, community cloud is extremely popular for government agencies. Think about banks and healthcare organizations, right? Now, all of these banks will have similar kind of security authentication. You might have realized you'll have a username, you'll have a password, you'll have an OTP, you'll have to enter a secret password, passcode, identification, something like that, right? So all of these implementation can be done in one community cloud and eventually everyone can start using that, right? Now, you might say, hey, that isn't very secure, but you'll be surprised at how effective it is. But again, it comes with its own advantages and disadvantages. The advantages is for a fact that, all of these things that we say, hey, all these companies use the same authentication protocol, so let's just have one thing, right? So it's not just one random thing that's put into place. It's something which is usually compliant with an industry requirement that says, hey, this has to have the capability to do this. Only then will I and my competitor actually try to use it. Right? That's one advantage. The second advantage is that it provides a ton of flexibility, heavy amounts of flexibility through which individual companies can get access to all these controls. They can work with it as they desire, right? But every advantage has a slight disadvantage, and in the case of community cloud, it portrays itself as a bottleneck through which you have one server, let's just say hypothetically you have one server shared by two companies or something like that, right? So the bandwidth of how much you can load up the server and how much you can store data and move things around will be limited because it's one resource being shared with like two companies, right? Now I'm giving you a hypothetical example, but this happens in the real world on the stage as well, because at the end of the day, if you have something and you're sharing it, you don't get to use the full beans. You don't get to give it full throttle and use it all the time as you wish, because that resource is also shared to someone else, right? So you will have a hard limit that says, hey, your bandwidth is only this much. You can only store this much data. And again, think about scalability a little bit here as well, right? So that is where having a hybrid model is advantageous over community cloud. But as I told you, community cloud in many cases is way cheaper than private cloud, and compared to public cloud, it is cheap as well, right? So if cost is your primary concern, I would highly suggest you guys take a look at the community cloud. Now we're going to take a look at cloud computing services. I know you guys are excited to go about learning about these varieties of services and models that we have for you guys. And you have to understand that there are three very, very important cloud computing services in today's world, right? Type of models, basically. We have three things. It's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So let's quickly take a look at what each of these are. But before we dive right into one of those to say, hey, this is what this does, let's actually understand the process of how you would go on to choose one of these, right? Now, your first thing should be is to thoroughly understand what platform as a service is, what infrastructure as a service is, and what software as a service is. After you understand the model, you're going to have some project which says, hey, I have these and these requirements and I want those requirements to be met. Then you compare those project requirements. Once you've understood the model, you can directly match saying, hey, PAS gives me these many advantages, EAS gives me these many advantages, SaaS gives me these advantages. So once you know what does what, once you have a mapping, you can actually jump and say, hey, so I can start setting up my workflows based on which model I picked, and you can start working on it, right? So the process of choosing one at the end of the day is very simple if you're very good at analyzing what's exactly required, what are the future trends, and how can you go on to solve the current problems that you might have had, right? Now, working on these, as I told you, it's not as easy as it sounds, but at the end of the day, if you're very good at evaluating project requirements and knowing what's required at hand, you can figure out a model and you can start implementing it. And having these models, in my opinion, is what gives wings to the domain of cloud computing, right? Again, it's flying across all the charts. Everyone around you is trying to use one form of cloud computing or another, and when that is the case, you have to understand why is cloud computing soaring so high. And in my opinion, these services are the reason for that, right? So let's quickly take a look at what you get to do and what IaaS, or infrastructure as a service, is. Now, infrastructure as a service, wherein you want a service, but as a service you're getting a complete infrastructure. Someone is saying, hey, here is a building for you to move in and you can start working. You don't have to take care about actually constructing the building, buying a land, buying plot for it, planning everything out, constructing a building. All of that is not there. Someone does it for you. The building is ready for you to move in and start using. Similarly, in infrastructure as a service, it's provision of cloud computing resources over the cloud, and here the cloud provider himself or herself, in this case it's people like DigitalOcean, AWS, Azure, GCP, all these guys. They'll say, hey, we'll take up some of the load for you, we'll do some of the heavy lifting so that you don't have to worry about a lot of things, and you definitely can go on to work on things such as logic or actually building your application. So what the provider supplies is things like infrastructure in terms of storage, in terms of networking, in terms of hardware, and a lot more. IaaS is considered to be very, very popular, and it is portrayed to show a growth of around 40% in the year 2021 alone. Even though right now it might not be the most popular model out there, but I definitely think you guys should take a look at understanding IaaS seriously, right? When I say IaaS, it's basically IaaS, or infrastructure as a service, right? So this is very important for you guys to understand. In terms of infrastructure as a service, what it is that you'll have to manage and what is it that the cloud manages, right? Take a look at on the left side what you manage. Here you'll actually be working on your applications. You'll be taking care of all of your data that's required for your applications, all the runtimes. When I say a runtime, maybe you want to run Python code on the cloud, right? So you require a runtime for Python to work. You require the interpreter for it. And when you have to run all of these, let's say in a Windows operating system, you're going to require the operating system to manage, right? So you have the flexibility to say, hey, I want this operating system, I want to run these many runtimes on it. And of course, since it's your own application, you cannot have the cloud computing guy maintain your give you data to use for your application. You yourself must have your application, and you yourself must have the data that supports and helps your application work. This is what you manage in IaaS. But what does the cloud computing platform manage? Well, they are providing you servers for you to use. They are providing you storage methodology. They say, hey, we'll give you 30 terabytes worth of storage for you to run this application or something like that, right? So Everything from servers, storage, authentication protocols, networking, creating a bridge to ensure that those servers talk to your applications, and everything, even including the concepts of virtualization, is what they will manage. So you will have to configure things on this side, on the right side of things, but at the end of the day, you will never have to set all of these things up from scratch, right? So this is IaaS. And when you take a look at the next thing, which is platform as a service, which is PaaS, as it's also called, again, here is where you're not getting an infrastructure as a service, but you're getting one platform as a service. Think of it as a part of the infrastructure, right? When people tell you, hey, you have an apartment building and it's already constructed and ready, and if you're just going to pick that up, that's IaaS, that's infrastructure as a service. With respect to platform as a service, people will say, hey, there's an entire apartment building ready and we can let you have access to the third floor. Whatever happens in the third floor, it's yours, right? So you have one tiny platform in an entire infrastructure for you to use. Here, the similar analogy applies, wherein they're providing you certain resources, just like IaaS, they're providing you a couple of resources through which you can manage your applications, you can manage your portfolio, whatever it is that you're trying to run. You can have multiple frameworks, multiple languages, and knowing that there are certain things, knowing that, hey, someone is providing an entire platform for me to use, you as a developer will not have to break your head about all of these things, which eventually would have taken your time and your resource, right? With this, you can actually sit and work on actually solving the problem. If you're writing an application, think about it. Why are you writing the application? Someone has a problem, your client, your manager, your company, someone has a problem, and you're trying to solve that problem using your application, right? So you will have more time to focus on actually solving it and making it better, rather than figuring out how things work or how all these mundane things which tend to just keep the boat afloat, right? Things such as AWS EBS basically stands for Elastic Beanstalk. We have the Google App Engine, we have Apache Stratos, we have so many of these individual entities that are considered to be very good PaaS offerings in today's world, right? PaaS is something which is very good, even though the analogy where I told you, saying, hey, someone would just give you a tiny part of an apartment building rather than the entire building. You have to understand that when they are giving you a tiny part, everything else that's required to run that entire building is managed by them. All you have to do is take care of your application. All you have to do is take care of your data. And of course, they cannot do this for you. Again, it's your application, it's your data. But once you figure out saying, hey, if I just have to concentrate on my application, if I just have to make sure that I provide data to my application, you have reduced all this load. You don't have to worry about servers. You don't have to worry about operating systems. You don't have to worry about setting up runtimes, breaking your head about networking, breaking your head about storage. You don't have to set up any of these from scratch, because that is what the provider there is doing for you. Of course, you might have to configure and you have to tweak a little bit of things to make sure your application talks to that service at the end of the day, but you don't have to buy any of that, right? So that apartment example, the building example that I gave you, I hope it's slightly more clear now, understanding what it is that you'll have to manage in the case of IaaS and in the case of PaaS as well. Great, that's platform as a service. Now, what is software as a service? Software as a service is basically a concept through which you can have softwares, again, which are nothing but applications, and these can be hosted on a cloud computing platforms. As a user, the user should not be concerned about what happens in terms of software upgrades, what happens in terms of hardware updates, and all of that, right? The biggest advantage of software as a service is that you're getting an entire software through which you can work, so it doesn't require any sort of installation of any applications on your actually already existing infrastructure. You have something that's already working, and once you try to use SaaS, all someone's saying is, hey, we are giving you an entire software. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to mess with your own architecture to make it work, and you just have to use you'll get to use all the features of our software, and you can use it as a service. Think about all these Google applications. Think about Gmail, think about Google Photos, think about Google Drive, think about Dropbox, think about a CRM such as Salesforce as well, right? So all of these work on a software as a service model, because they're just giving you one software that's an entire service that they're providing, and you at the end of the day have the capability to basically work on a lot of different things. And knowing that having an entire software wherein you might not have to mess with your existing infrastructure is critical, right? So here Think about Google Photos, think about Google Drive. All you do is you move your data around, right? So everything from their own applications, their server, storage, runtime, virtualization, OS, networking, data, everything is managed by them. All you do is you move your photo to Google Cloud. But do you actually have to be concerned about where you're storing the data in the Google Cloud? No, it can be anywhere. Right now, I am in India right now, and it doesn't mean that as soon as I move something to Google Drive, the photo gets stored in the Indian server. For all that I know, it might get stored in a server. It might get stored in the Google server that's in Dubai, that's somewhere else on the other part of the world, like in the United States of America or something like that, right? Think about it. You don't have to break your head even on the levels of data, even on the levels of application, because if you're using something like Salesforce, you can use their own software, their own platform to create everything that you require. That you're seeing that moving from IaaS to PaaS and now to SaaS, which is software as a service, the cloud is doing more and more and more, right? When it is doing a lot more, it is taking off every burden that you see on your screen right now. Even though I say, I say it as a burden, because at the end of the day, you're going to require a ton of people to handle servers, maintain it. You're going to require a ton of people to work on storage. You're going to require a ton of people to work on networking, virtualization, operating systems, all of these things, right? So you have to keep all of this in mind, especially with respect to SaaS. So we can come to a section wherein we can discuss which of these is the most popular model. We spoke about IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. You might be wondering, hey, so in today's world, which is the most popular service model that we have out there? Well, when you're talking about the most popular service model, you really have to understand who it is for, because yes, the network professionals are going to be the ones who are considerate, who will be using IaaS a lot, because they get to have access to those many things, right? With respect to IaaS, the cloud manages some things and the users still have a lot of things to maintain. So network professionals prefer IaaS. And when it comes to PaaS, people who say, hey, I only want to take care of my data, I only want to take care of my application, rest I really don't want to be bothered about, I can offload all of that to someone else. In that case, PaaS is useful. But let's just say you're not a developer, you're not a network professional, you want to use cloud computing platforms, but you don't want to have any sort of technical knowledge. Using Google Drive, you don't require any sort of coding experience, right? You open Google Drive, you log in, you just move your photo, you click it and drag it on your mouse. It's as easy as that, and just put it in their platform. Similarly for Salesforce, of course, you require a ton of training to work on Salesforce itself. But at the end of the day, you don't have to think about how Salesforce was built, or, you don't have to sit and code about Salesforce to just learn about Salesforce or something like that, right? The analogy is similar here. If you're an end user who just says, hey, I want your entire software as a platform in itself, and I just want to start using that, SaaS is meant for end users. But in today's world, when we talk about the enterprise world, when we talk about what these big guns, what are the Fortune 500 companies using and what they prefer in today's world, you have to understand that platform as a service gives you the best of both abilities, right? It brings you a lot of advantages of IaaS, and it also gives you the flexibility of SaaS. That is the reason 35% of the entire workload that you would see on the cloud computing platforms in today's world is basically people using platform as a service, because this is the most popular one. And at the end of the day, it doesn't mean IaaS doesn't work well, or it doesn't mean SaaS doesn't work well. Depending on what it is that requires usage, depending on what proficiency, what your application is meant to do, or what level of flexibility you require, this is how the trend goes, right? But of course, as we're seeing, people do prefer PaaS over a lot of these things, but you will see that even SaaS and IaaS are quite popular there as well, right? So to give you a quick understanding, to quickly brush up on all of these things that we just discussed right now, think of the case of making, think of the case that you just want to eat some yummy biryani, right? Biryani is a very famous Indian dish. Now, when you take a look at biryani, if you are trying to have an on-premise server, it's like you saying, hey, I'm going to do all the shopping for all the materials which are required to cook biryani. I'm going to do it myself at home. I'm going to prepare it. I'm going to cook it. I'm going to eat it. I am done. Everything at home. That's similar to having an on-premise server. Now, with respect to infrastructure as a service, basically all you're trying to do is you're taking ready to cook biryani sets. You know that you'll find those packets on your supermarkets and all of that, and those kits will give you certain things to get started with the biryani itself. But you should still come home, you have to still cook it, you have to maybe mix the masala and do something a little bit. You're doing only a little amount of work rather than everything, right? And eventually you still get to eat biryani, right? Now think about PaaS. Platform as a service is basically you guys saying, hey, I'm going to call Zomato, Swiggy, or any of these popular food delivery apps like DoorDash, and if you guys are watching this from the US or something, where someone has already cooked the biryani for you and your job is to just sit and eat it. Your goal, in fact, is to just eat biryani. How you eat biryani is very important, right? You either cook it from scratch, you just bring a ready-to-eat kit, you do some of the work, or you have someone else do it completely for you and you would just sit and eat it. That is PaaS. Now, thinking about SaaS, software as an entire service is basically you just walking into your favorite restaurant and you just wanting to sit there, eat biryani, and you're done. Your goal is met. So you're just moving into your favorite restaurant, you using on the lines their software to actually sit there, make sure your goal is met, and you eventually come out of that application, come out of that restaurant, right? Now, talking about all of this biryani definitely has made me a little more hungrier, if I can be honest with you, but I really hope that understanding cloud computing services this way will actually help you have complete clarity on what it is that we just spoke about all this while, right? All right, guys, now that we had a chance to look at so many things, and we even had a chance to take a look at the other models such as infrastructure as a service and of course platform as a service, I am sure that you understood that, hey, working up the ladder, it is just getting more and more simplified, and it is getting really convenient for be it application developers, clients, or even users to work with these platforms, right? So what is software as a service, to quickly revisit and to understand what actually means as a whole, right? So SaaS is nothing but a software deployment model through which a cloud provider says, hey, I'm going to be giving you one completely built ready software that you guys can use, and all you're going to require to work with it is an internet connection. Right? When someone says, hey, I'm going to be giving you an entire software and you have to work with it, all you need is an internet connection. Just give it a thought. Where have you used these concepts before, right? Because I am sure, you would have used a ton of applications which are built this way. Let me give you an example. Think about Netflix. We all love watching TV shows on Netflix and movies and whatnot, right? So there you don't really have to be concerned about where the data is stored, who's storing what data, how is it being managed, and nothing like that, right? You just log in, you have a subscription plan, you pay, and you can watch any movie that you want, right? So we're going to be picking up more of this example, but I just wanted to tell you this. When you think about the popularity of SaaS, right? One critical thing that all of you all have to understand at this moment of time is that with respect to SaaS, the convenience level is, in my opinion, a lot higher when you compare it to IaaS, and especially when you compare it to PaaS. Now, when that is the case, you have to understand that everyone would be interested. It's more convenient, it's more easy to get started, and it is delivering everything which you require to maybe get started with your application, or in fact go on to have it as a major part of your application stack, build everything and start deploying, right? So this kind of an ability was never existing previously, and once people start leveraging the possibilities, once they start understanding, hey, you can do a lot with this, that is when they would be interested to take a look at it, right? So who are the crowd who are making use of SaaS? Well, to be honest with you, anyone who has stepped foot into the world of cloud computing will definitely would have checked out SaaS. For example, you yourself, you had to log into your Gmail account to actually open up YouTube, watch a video or something like that, or any platform where you had to log in and you're being provided a platform, right? Think about it. You log into Google, you check your mail, right? You're not installing any software. You don't require any specialized hardware to actually go on to check your mails. Nothing is on your machine. All you need is an internet connection and a way for your mobile or for your computer to talk through the internet. And that is it, right? You can have access to their entire, it's called as the Google suite. You can have everything, Google Meet, calendars, all the ton of tools which they're giving you. Now, all of that, how do you think it works, right? Even a simple operation of you guys just opening up Google Drive and just moving your photos there, dragging and dropping your photos. Again, you really don't have to install any software. You don't require complicated hardware. All you're going to need to know is how to move it. And again, are you bothering about on which hard disk, in which server, in which city, which country your data is stored? Not really, because as and when you want it, right? When you've backed up something on Google Drive, if you want it, what would you do? You just quickly log in, download it, and you're done, right? It is basically you going there for a purpose, getting your solution to your problem. In this case, downloading a photo, you do it within an instant. Everything else, right? Of course, there's a huge process. There's a very, very big process on the back end, which Google will take care of for you, like where your data gets stored, on which server. Maybe there can be photos which you have never seen or used for a really long time, so they can move it to another type of secondary storage, which is maybe not as fast as their primary servers, right? All of these things is a lot to know, but the discussion here is to ensure that you have the convenience today, and this convenience is actually getting a lot of people interested into the world of SaaS. Right? Now, cloud computing is a domain on its own which is worth billions and billions of dollars, right? Now, it's a sort of a new concept. We've had cloud computing, the rise of cloud computing from the start of 2000s. And as you already saw, the way the world is progressing towards cloud computing, everyone, right? Now, if you're a person who's already working, who's watching the scores, you will know yourself that your own company, your employer will be using some sort of a server client network, be it on-premise or a mixture of on-premise with respect to a public cloud or a private cloud or something like that, right? So everyone, including researchers, are very much interested. So you might tend to ask a question at this moment of time which says, hey, so how big is SaaS? Let me answer that question. In fact, McKinsey and company have answered that question. They say that the entire market for SaaS products, right? All these G Suite, Netflix, in fact, there's more we're going to be discussing. So all of these products, the market is going to cross $200 billion. Now, we're living in a world where there's $300 billion for the entire cloud computing industry. And when people are saying, especially a reputed organization like McKinsey and company saying that, hey, this is going to be worth $200 billion, or at least that is what is portrayed. And guess what? This is happening in the next 3 years, right? Just in the next 3 years, rapid surge of growth. Now, what that should tell you is the fact that going ahead, it is already a super convenient process to use right now. Going ahead with the power of AI, it can get a lot better, lot simpler, wherein everyone can probably hop onto these platforms, get their problem solved and be done with it, right? So think about it. Where are these cases where you required an internet connection, where you connected to a website or a service or something and you started working on their softwares there, right? Netflix is one good example which we already checked out. Think about Salesforce, right? Salesforce, they're giving you one entire platform as a software, right? It's a very, very famous CRM platform, and at the end of the day, they're telling you, hey, here's our entire platform. You will have everything you require to build your application and data, and all you have to bring is your logic. All you have to bring is working on your application, of course, building your application, deploying it, and all the data that's required to back up how your application works and all of that, right? All the data, in fact, that's required for the application to work. Now, if you do that, that is it. Your data and your app can work on their entire platform by leveraging all the resources that Salesforce provides, the platform that Salesforce provides, and all the maintainability, the hardware, the software. None of your headache. It's all that those guys will take care of for you, right? That's important. Similarly, Google Suite. Think about it, right? Think about Gmail, think about YouTube, think about all the various Google applications that are out there. If you just find out the number of apps that are in Google Suite, it's just expanding and expanding. Now there again, you don't need any sort of specialized hardware or software to work with it, correct? Another good example is Office 365. Again, if you're talking about G Suite more, you can think about Google Docs, Google Slides and all of that, right? You don't even require Microsoft Office to be downloaded on your computer to use 99% of its features, because Office 365 is a subscription based model wherein if you have an internet connection, you have access to all of these software such as Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, spreadsheets, and a lot more, right? Think about it. You're having the power of a software, but you don't have to install it in your local machine. You just need a good internet connection to work with, and you're done, right? All the heavy lifting, all the tasks, all the resources, everything is taken care by your provider, by your platform, and all you have to do is, in fact, you're hugely advantageous in this position, because at the end of the day, all you will have to sit and do is work on your program, work on your logic, work on building your solution, and you are done. How more convenient can today's world of cloud computing get, right? Now you would probably figure out why it's going to be worth so many billions of dollars in the future, right? That's important to know. Next, we're going to understand quickly about how SaaS actually works, right? Now, to understand how SaaS works, to understand how software as a service actually works, you have to be very clear to understand how the world used to work before that, right? Now, before SaaS, as we've already discussed in a previous point of this course, people had to spend a ton of money on hardware, and it's not just spending money on hardware. You had to also be concerned about, bringing in the software for that hardware, ensuring everything works, having a person maintain it, pay electricity bills, things. It's electronics at the end of the day, so some things tend to fail, so you have to keep replacing it. You have to make sure critical data is backed up into another hard drive, which is again cost you a lot more money. Maybe you have a networking setup and you say, hey, one internet connection is not enough. What if it fails? My entire company goes down. So you would probably invest in another internet connection. You're seeing that, right? I just named 3 things and it's already getting out of hand for a while. This is how things used to work in the pre-SaaS era. And it's not just hardware. It's not just maintainability. Think about the software licensing and the costs, right? You might have seen many websites where you'll be trying to download software. If it's for personal use, they'll tell you it's free. If it's for commercial purposes, there is a small charge. If they say, hey, we require the enterprise grade version of the tool, right? In that particular case, the cost is going to be slightly higher because they're giving you a lot more features, which will not just work for an individual, for a team or something, but if there are thousands and thousands of people using that product for a common company's goal, they will make sure that it works, it is robust, and it is a high performance product that they're trying to deliver there, right? So it's very important for you to understand, before all of this, they had to do all this manually, and it wasn't cheap. All these costs, they mount up and up and up, and eventually you would have planned for XYZ amount, and in the pre-SaaS era, it would have gone to probably be 5 times what you initially planned. And most of the companies, of course, they would have taken a back saying, hey, we planned it at a smaller amount, but yet at the end of the day, when you receive your bill for your hardware and your software, it has just gone through the roof, right? So that's very important. Initial setup of hardware, initial setup of personnel to maintain the hardware, the software licensing costs, all those activation keys and everything, that costs money as well. And then the physical setup of your server and maintaining not just servers, also your network modules, right? Because if you have huge server racks, you're going to require very powerful switches and a network architecture to make sure that not only your servers connect to the outside world, but how safe and secure is it. So your firewalls have to be robust enough where you have to hire networking professionals to make sure that, whatever data is going in and out, it's going through a channel phase, right? Nothing is, no data gets to sneak in or sneak out. That just wouldn't make sense, right? So all of this was how the world was before. When that was the case, when everything had to be physical, when everything had to be on an on-premise server, think about a simple non-SaaS application that you would have to create, right? Let's just say you had to build a machine learning model. Now, building a machine learning model or a deep learning model in many cases is going to require a good amount of computing resources, right? Be it hard disk to store a lot of data, be it your graphical processing unit or GPU as it's called, right? You had to have the latest or the state-of-the-art ones, and you had to spend that extra money, and everything you did, there's a very good chance it would have just been local. It is localized to your machine, your network, or your on-premise network, right? There were no services that you could talk to ease any of these loads. Everything that you had to do had to be done in a localized environment. But think about a SaaS application. A SaaS-based application will only ask you saying, hey, do you have a good enough laptop which will help you connect to the internet and work at a decent pace? If your answer is yes, then done. You have virtually access to any sort of high performance virtual machine or any sort of high performance resource requirement that you would ever have. That is how powerful the world of cloud computing is today. So all you have to do is probably write code, upload it somewhere, and ensure that you're using the cloud's resources, the cloud's hardware, the cloud software to actually run it, execute it, test it, deploy it, everything. So probably what you would require in a SaaS applications case is a keyboard that works and an internet connection, right? Give that a thought for a second. You are moving all the heavy lifting and giving it to a cloud computing platform. Now you might ask, saying, hey, if it is heavy lifting for my computer, isn't it the same heavy lift that the servers will have to do for me? The cloud computing platform will have to do for me? Very good question, but we have reached a point in time where no matter how huge your requirement is, you cannot fulfill what these giants are providing. AWS, Azure, GCP, IBM Cloud, right? These guys have been in the industry for decades together, and they do know, the sheer power of computing that they're providing to you and the sheer number of resources, right? If you just want 10 terabytes worth of space allocated to you, by the time you heard that sound, it would have been allocated to you. That is how advanced the world of cloud computing is today, right? Now, to give you another good example to help you understand how SaaS works, let's just think of a fact that you went to your nearest electronics store and you got a flashing brand new DVD player. And of course, once you buy a DVD player, to fully use it, what should you do? You of course have to buy DVDs to actually put it in the player and watch your favorite movies or listen to songs or whatever it is, right? Now, let's just say you did this 1 or 2 years ago, and from then till now, you have been spending money to physically buy DVDs and actually watch these movies. Now, technology has advanced. The age of the DVDs is sort of over. It's now the age of the 4K ultra high definition televisions and Blu-ray players, right? So you decide to get a new 4K TV and you say, hey, now I want a Blu-ray player because I want to enjoy better clarity. Fantastic. The same concept applies for your Blu-ray player also, right? Discs are more expensive at the end of the day, and you still have to put physical Blu-ray discs in many cases to actually watch the movies. Now, I said many cases. I never said you have to put it, right? Because certain Blu-ray players give you these features of you actually buying a virtual DVD kind of a thing or a virtual Blu-ray wherein you have access to that particular movie. You can watch it on demand whenever you want, right? Now, what is one step ahead of that? One step ahead of that is streaming, right? Streaming, you will actually only require your TV, you wouldn't require your Blu-ray player. Now, let's just say there is this very nice movie that you would love to watch on Netflix, and you have an option of either Netflix or DVD, right? Now, once you say, hey, I'm going to pick up Netflix, your advantages are great. If you have a working internet connection and you know that Netflix is giving you 4K content or high definition content there, that is it. That is all you require, an internet connection and an actual television to watch it. You buying a Blu-ray player is no longer necessary. You buying Blu-rays to actually watch them in that player, again, no longer necessary, right? Think about it. A lot of online platforms has revolutionized how we work with physical medium and how we actually work with data itself. This is again how SaaS works. You're basically given everything that you would need to get started and to work with that domain, that technology or that application. And all you would have to do is ensure that, whatever is being served, just make sure that it aligns with your application's requirements, fiddle a couple of things around, and you're good to go. How simple is that, right? So SaaS works in really wonderful ways. And as we already checked out, previously we had a quick introduction to SaaS, PaaS and IaaS, right? So in the cloud triangle, this is what I'd like to call it, the cloud triangle, where do you think SaaS fits? Because it is a common belief that SaaS is right at the top of the triangle, because when you just think about convenience, right? Working from the base of the triangle, IaaS does a lot where the user will have to manage a lot of things while the cloud provider manages a bit. And then we checked out platform as a service. In platform as a service, the user got to manage the applications and data. Rest everything was managed by the provider. What happened in SaaS? SaaS is basically telling you, hey, as a provider, I'm going to be giving you fully ready cloud applications that you can use to start working with it. Think about Netflix, think about Google Drive, think about Box, think about Office 365, all of those, right? There you don't require hardware. There you don't require any sort of specialized software, licensing, activating keys. Of course, a subscription model is going to give you all that. But at the end of the day, you don't require a lot of these things. So in terms of convenience, it's again very good. But in terms of control, when you're working your way in terms of you requiring visibility, transparency, control over everything that goes on in a cloud computing platform, you're better exposed in the case of IaaS rather than SaaS. But at the end of the day, if you have picked up SaaS as your model, there's a very good chance you don't really want to have 100% transparency. It doesn't matter, right? Now, if you're a person who's going to watch a movie on Netflix, You basically open Netflix, have your food ready or something if you're like me, and you eventually start eating and watching, something like that, right? Do you bother about in which server the data has stored? Where is that server located? On which hard disk of which server of which city your particular movie that you're watching in Netflix is stored? Do you have to care about all of that? Do you have to care about which version of Netflix player you're using? No. At the end of the day, if you hit play, the movie starts playing and everything is fine, you're done, right? So think about all the things you just had to offload. Of course, 99% of the people wouldn't even begin to think about it. And that is where SaaS is growing really well. If you're a person who has chosen this model, you will know that even though transparency is really less, the sheer amount of convenience thoroughly makes up for it, right? Alright, now coming to a section where we're going to be discussing the advantages of SaaS or software as a service, right? First of all, you have to understand that there are a lot of advantages for you guys. The first advantage is on the line of payment flexibility. Now, when we discuss pricing in the next section, we're going to be taking a look at it to a greater amount of detail. But right now, you have to understand that when you're being given an entire software to use and it's delivered to your service over the internet, you might think saying, hey, now if I have to use an entire software, I have to pay for the entire thing, right? I would rather buy my own hard disk, or I would rather buy my own Blu-ray disc rather than pay someone for that. But that really isn't the case. When you buy one single Blu-ray disc, you get to watch only that movie. But if you spend the same price on a subscription service, you get to watch a ton of movies for the entire year, right? So this kind of a flexibility in terms of you getting way more, right? Just think about the concept of value for money for a second. Now, we are talking about simple solutions like watching movies on Netflix and all of that. But if you're a Fortune 500 company who would say, hey, I'm going to bring you thousands and thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of revenue every single month or every single year, you are going to be focused on how well you can save your money, right? Money, time, precious resources, everything would want to be saved. And in the case of SaaS, you get to do a lot of that. And one more thing, when people pick up SaaS, is the advantage is that you have very good amount of vertical scalability. You can start building your application stack on one top of the other. And if you have a visibility in terms of how robust your provider is, then you can confidently start building your application, start setting everything up you require. And you can, as the common example that I usually give, today your application is probably having 10 different hits. Tomorrow, what if you have 1 million people, you go viral and there's 1 million people who want to start using your app or something, right? Now it depends on the provider to ensure that they have the capability to first of all provide the traffic. And in terms of paying, again, when we discuss the tiers, you'll understand. But at this moment of time, you have to know that it is very easy to go from 10 hits to 1 million hits, and you really would not have to be concerned. But in an on-premise network, you have to go buy new hardware, you have to probably buy new switches, you have to have a faster internet connection. Phew, so many different things that you had to do, right? This one or two points that we're discussing in terms of advantages covers for all the disadvantages of an on-premise network, in my opinion. And then think about the SaaS offerings, right? Whenever usually people think about something like Salesforce, they say, hey, so this is what this person is providing. I'm going to be stuck forever using that kind of an architecture or that kind of a setup where I might not have flexibility. Not really. If you're getting large amounts of scalability, you have to think about, you cannot get towards a lot of scalability unless you have flexibility, right? So here, you might have certain protocols, certain applications which are already working really fine, right? For your business units. Now, as soon as you say, hey, I'm going to be moving to SaaS, it doesn't mean you have to drop everything here. SaaS offerings today can be customized to such a good degree that they can work really well. They can be integrated really well with already existing business units. And this again is a huge advantage in the basket of SaaS. And if you think it ended there, not really. The biggest advantage, in my opinion, is not having to think about software upgrades, right? Forget hardware upgrades. Hardware upgrades is of course annoying. But when you think about software upgrades, again, you'll be a person saying, hey, am I using the latest version of Windows? Am I using the latest virtual machine? Am I using the latest antivirus, latest software, even the most basic things, right? you don't have to worry about any of them because it's not your responsibility to take care of all of this. It's basically in your service level agreement saying, hey, as a provider, the provider is definitely going to take care of all of these, right? So it's really important for you guys to know that you're offloading another huge responsibility. Version control systems are where, today you have an app which is developed at version 1.0, tomorrow 1.1, day after tomorrow 1.2. So all those bug fixes in their platforms, fixing it, ensuring that your experience doesn't take a hit, at the end of the day is taken care of by your platform. And when you have high scalability, you have to also think about availability and accessibility, right? Here, it's literally accessible to everyone who has a decent enough machine, and you can start working with it. Now, you'll be surprised at the fact that I sit and write machine learning code. I write a lot of machine learning code, and I can do it on a platform such as Google Colab, which is basically a Jupyter notebook that is hosted as a SaaS offering on the Google Suite, right? Now, I can work on it with an old enough mobile phone, which is a smartphone, and it has an internet connectivity. That's it. Now I can sit and write complicated machine learning code and deep learning code, and I can get it to run fine. Why? Because at the end of the day, it is not using any of the resources on my phone to actually do the execution or do the heavy lifting. In fact, Google Cloud Platform is doing all of that for me, right? So accessibility, even though in today's world it might seem like, hey, doesn't everyone have a really high speed computer and a very good internet connection? Yes, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that everyone would actually, first of all, have this, and expecting that you would have your resources to do this is again not correct. But again, you don't have to worry about anything here because it is covered in the advantages, right? Next, we're going to take a look at some of the risks and challenges that are associated with respect to SaaS. Now, yes, there are a ton of advantages, right? In my personal opinion, even before I talk to you about the disadvantages, let me tell you that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages by a huge margin. So what are some of these nagging disadvantages that we take a look at? First of all, it's service disruptions, right? Now, when you're using an entire software that's provided to you as a service by a platform, let's just say that you're making use of the Google Suite or something. Now, if something happens to Google servers, you would have seen it, in the past, where if there is a downtime of like 5 or 10 minutes where, something in Google doesn't work, the entire world goes haywire, right? It's in the news. It makes headlines saying Google servers, they went down for like 10 seconds and people started losing millions of dollars just because of that. That is how critical it is, right? So even for you, if your website is down for 20 minutes, there's a very good chance you can lose thousands of dollars worth of business. So any of these disruptions, it will never be your own fault. There's a good chance it might never be your own fault. But at the end of the day, if the provider fails or if there's something wrong with the servers on their side, who is taking the final hit? It is still you, your customers, your clients who have to face the end of unavailability there, right? That's important for you to understand. And whenever these platforms say, hey, we're giving you the latest versions, whenever we are pushing out brand new versions of it and we have fixed a lot of bugs and all of that, it depends on how well they have done a job, right? So maybe they fixed one bug they had, but while doing that, they might have opened a Pandora's box wherein it might lead to a lot of security breaches if they have not taken care of it, right? So everyone is into rapid prototyping. Everyone wants to push out rapid updates all the time, not just in cloud computing. That's how software works. But again, how careful is the platform in doing it? How well are they? How strong are their fundamentals to a point where you would know that between a version jump, there might not be anything huge that would have gone wrong, right? That is super important for you to understand. Now, one more important thing that you have to consider is for a fact that whenever this new software version comes out in a software as a service platform, everyone have to use it, right? There is no offering that would say, hey, you can use an older version of Gmail while someone else can sit and use a newer version of Gmail. No, regardless of you want it or not, you'll be given a certain notice to probably get used to the new changes that are coming and, have early access to it or something. But at the end of the day, if you're a person who would not want an update where everything right now is working fine for you, guess what? When they bring the update, it is for you as well, right? So regardless of you wanting a new version of software, in many SaaS offerings, you are given it regardless. Now, that's an important thing to understand. And once you have completely gotten used to a SaaS offering, let's just say maybe you want to switch vendors. You're not very comfortable with that particular vendor and you want to jump ship to someone else. In that case, jumping ship, especially with respect to SaaS, is slightly difficult, and in many cases, it can get complicated, right? So that is something which you have to keep in your mind as well. And then the next thing is we have to talk a bit about privacy and security concerns, right? Because every company will have their own security environments, they'll have their own requirements, they'll have their own policies through which they'll have to use. Sometimes it so happens in your service level agreement that, maybe the platform is not able to provide that amount of security. Maybe you are handling data, which is extremely important, and you would not want, one single data breach, or that could compromise a huge thing for you, right? Now, when that is the case, what do? You rely on the platform provider to do it. So there is a slight security concern there. And an add-on to that is, of course, data privacy as well, right? Give it a thought for a second. You have some really important data that's on their platform, and of course everything is doing well, but the second that there might be a data breach, or someone unauthorized has access to your data, and if it's very, very complicated data, be it government data, military data, or anything on those lines, it's a huge deal, right? So this is where data privacy comes into the picture. And how do you fight all of this then? How, if you have extremely strict security requirements and you want your data to be secure no matter what do? You hire a third party, right? You bring in another company, another application, another service to tell them, hey, I want you to make sure that my data remains safe with these guys. So you'll have to pay those guys. You have to pay for that application, pay for those services, maintainability again, pay for the protocols, pay for everything that maybe that particular platform is not able to provide for you, right? That is really important. And then when you think about key management and encryption, as I just told you, your standards might be super high compared to what they have said. It might be working really well. They might have never had a data breach. Good. But your requirement says, hey, I require level 10 security requirements. Let's just say that that's in your SOP or something. And they would say, hey, sorry, we're able to only provide 7. So you would have to hire someone else to do that remaining 3 for you, in terms of inventory, in terms of key management, in terms of encrypting your data, in terms of finding a way to make sure in between the platform and yourself, there can be no possibility for data breach as well, right? There's so many things, especially on the lines of security concerns that you might have. But at the end of the day, all the SaaS offerings we have, or in fact, most of them are robust enough to make sure that you don't have to be worried about all of this, right? Fantastic. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is pricing in terms of software as a service, because it's very easy to say, hey, there is one policy, it's called pay as you go. Correct. It's highly effective compared to paying for traditional software, as I just told you, right? Why would you want to buy a Blu-ray DVD where you're getting for the same cost probably an entire subscription to watch ton of movies for an entire year? Of course, it's cost effective, but it is not just pay as you go policy. There is very much more than that. Think about paying based on your usage, right? Now, no one's just saying, hey, this is the resource that you have used. No matter you use it or not, you have to pay for it. Not really. In the case of based on usage, what you would be doing is, if you used 25-30% of the performance of that particular machine or that resource or something, or you have only taken up 30% of certain hard disk space that was allocated to you, many SaaS platforms will tell you, hey, you have only taken up 30%, right? You just pay for that. So just pay for whatever it is that you are using. That seems amazingly fair in today's world, right? Think about it for a second. There's another policy which says, hey, you can also pay per active user. Now, if you have a company worth 1,000 people, and let's just say there's only 100 people who are using your platform, why should you have to pay for the rest 900 if they will never log into that platform again? Think about it, right? So if you have 100 people out of 1,000 people using your platform, well and good, just pay for those 100 people. That is critical for you to understand, right? And the next thing is the feature-based tier model. This you would have definitely seen on multiple cases, right? If you have the free version of a product, you would be only having access to certain features. If you want the pro version, then you have access to maybe more features, right? In a common scenario, whenever you pay for a pro version of an app or something, you usually don't see any more advertisements, correct? Think about that. And there would definitely be another tier above pro called premium or something like that, where you would get even more benefits, but the price is higher. So based on what pricing and what requirements you have, just for those features, you can end up paying a lot more money. It is very similar to the games that you might play as well. There might be one version which costs so and so money, and they would have given you another premium version where they would have added more cars into the game, or anything pertaining to that game. They would have given you extra features. They would have given you a head start in terms of the game, the money in the game or something like that, and they would be charging you more for that as well. So that's a feature user-based tier model. And of course, the most common thing with respect to software as a service is a flat rate subscription, right? They would say, hey, regardless of how many users, we really don't bother about all of that. We're going to give you this platform. You can pay on a monthly basis or you can pay on an annual basis. Just give us one amount and you get everything, right? Think about it. Netflix works on a similar basis, right? You pay monthly or you pay yearly and you have access to, of course, they have policies that says that you cannot actively use the same subscription in two places. But if it's only one subscription that you're going to be using and you're adhering to all their rules and regulations and all of that, you pay once and you can use it. You can watch as many movies as you want, of course, one after the other for a year, right? They're not going to tell you, hey, you watched 12 movies today, stop watching. Not really. That doesn't happen, right? So once you pay flat rate, you're done. You can do whatever it is you want with that platform. The last one is based on storage tiers. Now, this is very interesting, as I just told you, right? If you're using only a part of the storage requirement that you will have, this is very common on Google Drive. Initially, they would have given you probably 15 GB of free storage. And if you require more, if you require 60 GB, 100 GB per month of storage or something, again, you have a small price that you have to pay to make sure that they are allocating that required amount of space for you, right? Now, it is unfair to say that, hey, if you require 50 GB of space, you have to pay X price. And if you require 1 terabyte of space, you pay the same X price. Does it make sense? Not really, right? So the pricing will be based upon, again, the resources in terms of hardware, secondary storage that you guys will be using as well. So all in all, whenever you usually read about SaaS, people will tend to tell you pay as you go model. Fine, pay as you go is really well, but you really have to, get into more detail and understand about that. Hey, you can pay as per usage. You can pay as per how many active users are using, as per the features. You can have a flat rate model. You can be paying just with respect to the amount of storage that you're using and a lot more as well, right? Now, these are the common things that talks about pricing for the entire SaaS world. But again, depending on what provider is giving you what sort of features, again, the prices or, certain models might change. But all in all, this is how the pricing works for SaaS. Fantastic, guys. With this, we have come to the end of the course. We took a look at everything right from the introduction to cloud computing, understanding why we require cloud computing, what are the various deployment models, public cloud, private cloud, hybrid clouds, community clouds, and a lot more. We understood what are the advantages of them, what are the disadvantages, where are they working really well. After that, we made sure to take a look at how the domain of cloud computing itself works, the front end, the back end, the middleware. Once we understood that, you had a complete idea to get started with these model. So we had to take a look at IaaS, PaaS and SaaS, and we understood what you have to manage in these cases, what the provider is managing, great examples for you to understand and retain the knowledge in your head, saying, okay, so this is how IaaS works, so this is how PaaS works, and you will remember it, right? After that, we had a deep dive right into understanding SaaS. We understood what it is, we understood how it works, what are some of the advantages of it, what are some of the privacy and risks that are associated with it, and we also took a look at the various pricing models that most of these platforms are providing to the users, right? So guys, with this, you've come to the end of the course. I hope you guys are cleared with everything I've covered here. With that, thank you so much for completing this. My name is Anirudh Rao, and as always, I'm more than excited to see you guys on the next one. Thank you.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. This is done to make sure you do not miss out on any of the new updates or video releases from Great Learning. And of course, guys, if you enjoy this video, show us some love and do like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, right? So make sure you share this video with your friends, colleague, and everyone who can make use of it. And at the end of it, make sure to comment on the video if you have any queries or any suggestions, and I'll be more than happy to respond to all of your comments.